Hi, good afternoon. Hi,
Hey,
I'm here
Sarah.
with, hello, I'm here with Julie Rochman. Is that correct? Or how is it?
Nobody ever says it right, but I say Rochman, like Rochester.
Rochman. Okay. Oh, Rochester. Okay. Rochman. Rochman. Okay.
Rochman.
Sorry. So sorry.
Okay.
Uh,
Nobody ever gets it
my,
right.
well, I'm Sarah MacArthur and I'm down here in Roswell. I'm the chair of the Chaves County Democratic Party until March at least. And what I'm doing is I'm doing a series of interviews with people that are interviewing to be candidates for the state Democratic Party. And Julie here is going to run to be the treasurer. I'm not sure if there's a second person declared or not. And so either way, she needs her time in the seat, and so she's going to get it today. We're going to go through a series of questions that I've asked all the other candidates as well so far, and plan to ask all the future candidates. So thanks for joining us and watching this. We really appreciate it, and we want people in positions that'll help us to advance our cause. So here we go. All right, are you ready?
Eddie.
Ready. Yay. Okay, so we're delighted that you could come and be with us on our podcast or video, whichever one they want to call it. And what I would ask you is to give us a little bit of your personal history and then give us your history with the Democratic Party and how you got involved and what motivated you to become a Democrat.
Okay, what's sort of the same thing for me? I've been a Democrat my whole life.
Okay.
I grew up in Omaha, Nebraska, which is a big Democratic blue dot in a very red state. My family was very solidly Democrat. My mom was on the board of Planned Parenthood in Omaha. Both my parents, all of my grandparents, who, by the way, were all immigrants, were very liberal people. I think I became an official Democrat when I was in second grade because I was the only person in my second grade class to vote for Hubert Humphrey instead of Richard Nixon in our school's mock election. I actually had to give a speech in
Oh,
front of all the other
wow.
second graders about why I was voting for Hubert Humphrey.
Mm.
Um, I also was really fortunate that when I was in high school, I interned for my U.S. Senator because he was a
Mm.
Democrat. Nebraska used to be run by Democrats. It's really sad what's happened. So one of the reasons I don't live there is it's gone so far to the right. My wife actually worked on the John Kerry for President campaign here in New Mexico as the
Wow.
director of research for the presidential campaign. And I would come out from DC because we were living in DC at the time to help, set up and tear down equipment for events and stuff. And I really couldn't be political during my working life because I was the spokesperson for businesses, insurance organizations, and so my name really wasn't my own. And as soon as I retired and we moved to New Mexico, I immediately set out to get involved with DPNM and the Democratic Party of Bernalillo County here in Albuquerque, because that's my tribe. Those are my people, And so I felt
Mm.
like we were moving someplace new, and the best way to get to know people who likely had a similar worldview to my own is the Democratic Party. That's my home. That's where I feel comfortable.
Mm. Okay, great. Well, that answers that question. Thank you. Um, did you get to go to the Democratic National Convention in Chicago in August?
I did not.
Oh,
We
okay.
helped fund several of the delegates who went. I was actually at the DNC in 2004 when it was in
Oh,
Boston because my wife was working on the Kerry campaign, and
uh-huh.
I actually knew the guy who was running the campaign in New Mexico. So he let me hang out with the New Mexico delegation for some of the events, which was amazing.
Uh-huh.
But I did not get to go this.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, and I was gonna just ask if you did get to go, what the highlights were. I think people just really appreciated all the hope and joy and all of that in the arena, which kind of got translated through some of the media here. So, okay.
Yeah,
Well, and it's unfortunate that we only get to go send 45 people. I mean, obviously for a bigger state, we'd send more, but that's okay.
yeah.
That's the way that works. So you are running to be the treasurer of the Democratic Party of New Mexico, and thanks for stepping up and declaring early on and letting us know that. And tell us what has motivated you to take on this role, other than
So
what
I
you've
moved
already
here in
said.
2019. Well,
Hmm.
there are lots of
Yeah.
reasons. One of them was I was living in Florida when I retired, in 2018. We moved here toward the end of 2019 after sitting with a road atlas, literally, because we're old and there's a road atlas, and glass of wine and saying, if you could live anywhere, where would you live? And of course, you cross off all the states with a really terrible winter, and you cross off all the states that are terribly expensive, and you cross off all the states that have overwhelmingly Republican majorities. And we sort of winnowed things down and ended up saying, hey, you know what, we really liked New Mexico when we were out there for the Kerry campaign. We should just move there. And
Okay.
because Mexico has been such a welcoming, compassionate, wonderful place, we decided that we would do everything we could to help keep it that way.
Hmm.
I am a huge believer that every human, every New Mexican in particular, has the right to an opportunity for success, personally and professionally. And so I started investing in candidates and organizations and the party. And I feel like I could bring some value, some management experience, some passion to the job of treasurer. I got to say, I wish that money wasn't at the heart of our political system. It really shouldn't be. But once the Supreme Court, you know, gave us
Oh, we've
Citizens
got to
United,
overturn Citizens United. Absolutely.
we
Right.
do. We absolutely do. It is corrupting politics at every level, but it also makes it impossible for Democrats not to raise money because if we don't compete at every level, we're just unilaterally abandoning the playing field and we can't do that. So while I hate asking people for money, I don't know who doesn't hate asking people for money. I do think I can bring some insights into how we ask people to be investors in the party.
Hmm.
And I also believe we need meticulous, totally transparent management of every dollar that comes to DPNM. We should be reporting out what kinds of returns on investments we're providing for people, what the outcomes of those investments are. The
Hmm.
current treasurer, Ray Allen's done just a masterful job of putting all sorts of compliance functions and accounting functions in place so things move smoothly.
Hmm.
And even though I'm not an accountant like she is, I feel like I can build on that and help
Hmm.
diversify our revenue stream so that we can function all year, every year, not just show up right before election time. We have to cultivate grassroots. We have to care for our people and do things
Hmm.
all the time.
Okay. Okay. Do you have a background in keeping bookkeeping or something of a financial in other words, have you ever done any kind of treasurer work before?
I have not been a treasurer per se. I have served on some corporate boards and some nonprofit boards and been on audit and finance committees where, you're going through budgets and doing audits. I have been a CEO, I've been a manager, I've created budgets, I've managed budgets. I'm very comfortable in that world.
Okay.
And DPN does have a compliance person to make sure that, everything is going the way it should. And there are also some other people who help with financial stuff, but I've spent a lot of time talking to Rail who's the current treasurer, and she assures me that I am fully competent to do the job. The guy before her was a
Right.
lieutenant. So
Okay.
yeah, I
So
feel that
that means Ray Ellen's not going to, she's already said I'm not running again. Has she indicated that? Oh, okay. All right. I wondered about that. Okay.
yeah, she's
Yeah.
been great. I think, she's been doing it for 4 years and
That's a
she wants
lot.
to go on. Yeah.
I think there's a lot of people that don't necessarily understand. And particularly in like the rural areas where I'm at, there are a lot of people that just think they can show up once in a while and things just keep happening. But the truth is you burn out the fewer people. If your organization has very few people, you end up burning out the people that are doing the work. And so to be a treasurer or such a high powered position for 4 years is extremely time consuming and taxing. And what people forget is it's a volunteer position. You're not getting paid. Even though you're asking for money, you're not taking any money home. You're doing it all on a voluntary basis. And I think people forget that. So I just want to throw that out there since we're talking about money and
Oh
that's one
no.
of the things that
Yeah.
people talk about is that I had mentioned this, I think, to Sarah Adelson yesterday that we made a mistake 40, 50 years ago by saying, oh, it's not polite to talk about politics. Well, the same goes for money. Even though, I mean, possibly we shouldn't talk about how much money we have or that kind of stuff, but how to handle money and how to function in society and where the money's going and how we have devolved into an oligarchy all of a sudden. And it's like so apparently clear now that Elon Musk has a private office in the White House. That's going to happen. And that's like such an oligarchical thing to do, to say, oh yeah, let's just give the richest man in the world, access to the president and just down the hallway. And so
Well, and
anyway,
it's going to get worse because when Trump
oh,
died, which, he will at some point, if it's during his term and JD Vance becomes president, those oligarchs are going to run JD like a top. I mean,
well,
they
he
can't.
he
So
deserves it.
he, yeah, but the thing is, and this is a lot of people I know got involved in politics in 2016 because of Trump. And I think all of us, having lived through the first term, know that this is going to be worse. The collateral and direct damage that this administration will do will be unparalleled. And it is always the case. At least it seems to me it's always the case. Republicans make a big steaming pile of messy stuff,
Gooey, gooey, stinky stuff.
really stinky stuff, and then Democrats get elected to clean it up. So we do the hard work of cleaning up the mess, and then they take credit for what we've done, because when we have to do things to clean up messes that are unpopular, then we get voted out of office. And I think that's why we
Well,
see the swings.
the other advantage that's happening and occurring at this juncture is that they have purchased all of the mass media in a lot of ways, all the mainstream media, and so you have, very, very wealthy, uber wealthy billionaires that control our media now. And so Joe Biden, who did a fabulous job as our president, didn't get his message out, and the message didn't get to the regular Joes that now turned and voted for Trump, thinking the cost of eggs is going to go down. Like, who cares? I mean, at this juncture, you should be worried that your car that you're going to buy is going to cost the same price as a mid-sized house. If they put the 46% tariffs on a $40,000 car, I mean, that's another 20,000, a $60,000 car, and it's not even worth it. It's probably worth 20,000 to be honest.
Yeah,
So we're really screwed, and not just us. The world economy is going to suffer tremendously, and it's just very scary. So I am wearing black on Monday. All right. I totally digressed, and you made me think of so many things that I wanted to
no,
say,
no,
but
that's fine. We can talk about whatever you'd like.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, it's your show too, because I want you to be promoted and all of that. So we are actually on question 4, and this kind of leads into it. So what do you understand that the responsibilities um in um in any political organization are? Yeah, what is the responsibility of our political organization? Like the main job, the main emphasis, the main focus.
So I think that the job of any political party is to get members of that political party elected to office, right?
That's
And
right.
so there's usually a long lead up before somebody says they will run. They have to be comforted, they have to be cultivated, they have to be encouraged, they have to be supported. And then you have to bring resources to the campaign. And again, unfortunately, a lot of this comes down to money. I know with Emerge and other organizations in this state and around the country, we're all very actively engaged in trying to recruit non-traditional candidates, traditional candidates being mostly white guys over a certain age with a nice head of hair who are tall and look good on camera, right? So there's a lot of work to be, but I think the main thing that the Democratic Party of New Mexico needs to be doing in the next couple of years is recognizing that the Republicans are coming for us hard in 2 years because the governor's office is up. They cut their margin of victory in half, or margin of loss, I guess, because they lost here in half. So Biden beat Trump, by 10 or 11 points, and Harris beat Trump by 5 or 6 points. So, and they dumped millions of dollars into Yvette Herrell's pocket. So they're coming for us. They see New Mexico as a potential flip to Republicanism. I see New Mexico as a haven that we have got to preserve. I escort at Planned Parenthood several days a month, and I see all the Texas license plates coming here. And I hear the stories from these people who are getting out of their cars because they've driven for 13 hours just to get a medical procedure. And then they're going to turn around and, drive the same number of hours back. And if we, the Democratic Party of New
Wow.
Mexico, and our candidates and our electeds are not holding the line here with everything we've got in 2 years, shame on us, because we know they're coming and we've got to defend this place.
Right. And I think from a national point of view, I think that depending on what they do and what actions are taken nationally, like, they're talking day one, they're planning on going to Chicago and picking up illegals on day one. I mean, how scary is this, right? And so I think
Good.
that that kind of stuff is going to hopefully not push people out of politics or push them away from politics entirely, but push them back into being understanding that the Democrats are here to protect those things and protect your rights. I know that made me think of something. Yesterday, POTUS put out that the 28th Amendment was officially passed. And now I think that there's some like wiggle room. I've kind of read more about it and stuff. I got excited when I read the post, but then I kind of started reading more articles and stuff, and I discovered that, well, he's saying that, but that's not how the archivist is looking at that. And so, but there's some people in one area that is it the Department of Justice that said, yeah, they think it's true, and then there's another part that's I don't know. And so I feel like it should be 38 states, that's two-thirds, right? I think. So 38 states have ratified it. So it really should be, but there are people complaining that there's timelines that they didn't meet the timelines. I don't know. So do you have
I
any
don't know.
opinion on that? Oh, okay.
I don't know what the technicalities of it are, but I was always I believe that when I was in school and I took my constitutional law
Mhm.
classes, that in order for an amendment to be official, there has to be an actual constitutional convention at which it is approved. I think the two-thirds states gets you to the constitutional convention, but
No,
the
I'm
no,
going to tell you, no, a constitutional convention is where you get to go rewrite all the rules. And we've
right,
never had one of those.
right.
We've never had an actual constitutional convention, and we do not want to get there because at this juncture, the number of red states will decimate our Constitution. So
That
an
is
amendment can be different. I believe an amendment comes through a different way. And you know what? My son is going to watch this and he's going to call me and correct me.
good.
If we're wrong,
As long
I'm going to get told that I'm wrong.
as long as someone will correct us, I'm good. I'm
Yeah.
always happy to be corrected.
Well, now I'm going to have to put something out later and really research that and make sure I'm right. But I believe a convention is something that people have not wanted to happen because
Right,
that
because it
just opens
reopens
the
everything.
door up. Oh,
Right,
yeah. And,
exactly,
hmm,
exactly.
women will become second-class citizens even more so than they already are. So that'll be bad. So,
Yeah.
okay. How are you going to support the chair? Do you have any, have you had discussions with Jessica or with Raylene about how you support the chair or as the
I have,
treasurer?
yeah, I've talked to Jessica, I've talked to Ray Ellen, I've talked to Sean, who's the executive director. I've talked to Sarah Adelson, I've talked to Muddy Soul. And the treasurer's job is really kind of small compared to the other officers. And I think that the officers should work more collegially and sort of take things off on each other's plates to free up people. So, like for me, and I think Marisol agrees. Actually, I know Marisol agrees. I think Sarah agrees. The chair should be like the CEO. They should be out. We've got 33 counties. It's hard to get to a lot of places. And I really think the chairs need to be the people who are out and the vice chair too. Go see people, show up. Let's gather some intelligence about what people need and want and deserve in every part of the state. And I think, I'm happy to go places too, but I feel like if we've got the chair out and the vice chair out, really connecting and being that connective tissue for all 33 county chairs and the members of the SEC and the caucuses and the electeds and the candidates, then that's a real challenge to also ask them to do call time for hours a day to raise money for the party. So one of the ways I'd
Mhm.
like to support the chair and the vice chair is by helping with fundraising. I think all the officers should be engaged because you learn
Mhm.
something when you talk to investors in any organization. And I
Mhm.
think I can help raise money. And I think that will allow our chair and vice chair to be out rallying Democrats across the state. I also was a professional communicator in my working life, and I hope I can be of assistance to the chair in terms of messaging and content, whether it's social media or speeches. But you mentioned earlier how the right controls a lot of the mass media, and it's true. And people
Mhm.
are talking about should we buy a network or something, and Democrats have our own left-wing media.
Yes, we should.
Well, you may recall that
But
Al Gore tried that, One
yeah,
America
yeah.
Network, and it was
Hmm.
not supported. I feel like at this point, we can't catch them. We've got to
We
figure out
can't, but
by
we're
talking
doing
to
things
people.
like this, and we're doing, you know what I mean? I'm
Right.
doing this, and I'm hoping to expand on, after the elections are over, I'll do more stuff on democratic things and teaching civics, and
Yeah,
those are the things that we need to reach out and really try and make an effort to do.
I
I
agree.
know there's a lot of upheaval. There's two things I want to bring up. One is the TikTok.
Okay.
And I think that's, there's so many people that are upset with the idea that it's going away, and that I think they don't understand what it was that the Supreme Court just ruled on, and the Supreme Court ruled on the fact that China, the company, what is it, Byte Data or something like that, the
Yeah.
company that owns it, that's in China, basically went to our Supreme Court, after several iterations on the way up there, saying, well, TikTok is protected under the First Amendment. And the answer is you're a Chinese national company, a company out of there, and your laws, your communist laws say that you own any intelligence that is found within that company, and you own it, and you can access it anytime you want to. And so it's not a First Amendment issue. It's a national security issue. And TikTok, being a foreign owned company, isn't necessarily, and I get that, 170 million people in this country are upset about it. So their answer now is to go to Red News, which is even worse because that one's strictly not even a third party company. That one's actually owned by the Communist Party. And I'm like, wow, that's not the answer that people were looking for. But that was one thing that I wanted to just kind of touch on for a second. And then the other one was I forgot. So we'll move on. Sorry.
So, but I do, social media is good because it's direct media, right? There's no intermediary. It's people talking to people. The challenge is that when Ronald Reagan did away with the duopoly ruling and other rules and regulations about media ownership went by the wayside, Republicans stepped in and took advantage of it. I'll tell you who I think the smartest guy is in terms of countering that is Pete Buttigieg. He goes on
Oh,
Fox News.
brilliant.
He goes
Brilliant.
and so don't just leave the airwaves to these people. And I'm a big
Hmm.
believer that the DPM, all of us, we should be
Hmm.
looking for opportunities to speak to people who follow red media outlets because they're still people. And you can say, well, you're not going to change their mind. And that may
But that's
be,
not
but there are a
true.
whole lot of,
That isn't true because
and
when
some of
they,
them, right, some of them we can change their minds. But a
mhm,
lot of those terrestrial radio stations or broadcast outlets reach Democrats too. That's like, they're
mhm.
watching those things. We should all be watching a variety of news sources to make sure we're getting a balanced set of information. So I do think that we need to spend more time really hustling and trying to get our message out through the channels that currently exist and doing more of this kind of direct conversational stuff.
Well, one of the things that I used to do was, and I don't because I don't get regular TV anymore, so I have to pick and choose. But I get my Hulu through my son. But one of the things was when I had regular TV or cable, I would do ABC Today, CNN the next day, Fox one day a week, and on and on and on. And because depending on how large the story was, you could see how they were covering it, and it became clear that Fox never covered the same information. But the other thing that happens with the media is that they're not covering things equally. Like Kamala did not get covered in a significantly correct way, and then they didn't cover Donald by covering him and saying, hey, wow, he's babbling, he's not like making any sense, he's just spitballing one line sentences, getting applause, and he's not formulating any kind of thing. And then the media held her to such a degree of, well, she needs to tell us exactly what her policies are. When did they ever say that to Donald Trump? And so the disparity between the two is really problematic. And yeah, Pete
It
Buttigieg,
is.
I voted for him in the primary a long time ago when that happened. So I loved him. I do. I do love Pete, and he's amazing.
He
I hope he
is.
runs. I hope he runs. Um, what type of duties do you anticipate having to be involved with? And have you had a conversation with the current person, which you've already answered? You've talked to everybody already, so you don't have to answer
Mhm.
that part. Um, what kind of things, maybe what kind of things were you surprised to learn would be under your purview as the treasurer, responsibilities or anything of that nature?
Um, I don't know that there are any surprises. Treasurer's roles are usually pretty clean cut. There's a good job description. There's a good set of policies in place. I mean,
Okay.
extent like pages and pages of policies, how to handle stuff. I think
Hmm.
the obviously the most important thing is compliance with state and federal campaign finance laws and making sure that we don't do anything that's going to get the party or our candidates or our electeds in trouble. So that's the main thing. And we do have a
Hmm.
compliance contractor who helps with that. And beyond that, it is making sure the bills get paid. The piece that I really want to add, because again, Raylan has set up a wonderful financial controls system and using technology well to do the accounting. But I think that one of the things I'd like to do is really look at the budget in more of a modular way. So if everybody we talk to as party officers says, what we really need? We need a tribal organizer and we need at least one full-time organizer just to be out and about helping the county chairs. And if we don't
Sure.
have those, the funds to hire them, then we could say to the Democratic universe, hey, we're trying to raise X thousands of dollars because we need these people. And you can't hire people and not pay them. So I think one of the other things I'd like to do is to spend a lot of time talking to the SEC members and the county chairs and the caucuses and
Hmm.
all the other people who have New Mexico politics longer than I have, because I've only been here for 5 years and the first two were COVID, so I don't really count them. But I think we could
Okay.
we could do a better job of having like a menu of things and saying, all right, if we raise this much money, we'll do these things. And if we raise this much money, we'll do these things and these things. But we need to grow the functionality of the party so that we're operating 365
Hmm.
days a year,
Hmm.
whether it's an election year or not, because that's the only way we can like keep the energy alive and get the input from people that we need to understand where we need to go.
One of the things that I noticed, and I've been a chair for 3 years now, so I took over in the middle of a year, right after COVID. And one of the things I noticed was that our DPNM staff, the chair, vice chair, blah blah, they spend a lot of time being responsive to the DNC, the DCCC, and having to go places and attend these forums or meetings or workshops and stuff. And is that something that we need to fund for in a better way, or is there some, I don't know. I mean, I guess I'm
And
just
I think
curious as to how much that, how much time that takes from actually being in New Mexico and doing those 33 county visits and that kind of stuff. Do you
But
know?
that's why I think if you have four officers, the chair, the vice chair, the treasurer, and the secretary, who are all very collegial and sort of cooperative in what gets done, that if someone has to be out of town, someone else can pick up an in-state visit to a county or try to schedule those things around. I think there are four DNC meetings a year. I think there's always an opportunity to go and travel and do more. I have no desire to do that. My intention is to stay here as much as possible and do the work here. I think that the other people who are running feel the same way. Um, and there's a travel line in the budget, so some of that is covered. But I think more importantly, if we were going to add money to the travel budget, it would be to have in-person meetings here. Let's say to have all the county chairs get together once a year, to have all the county treasurers get together once a year, to
Mm-hmm.
have the CD chairs go out with the with the state chair and meet people. I mean, we need to connect. That's the problem that we have to overcome. I mentioned earlier, I grew up in a little blue dot in Nebraska. There are blue dots all over the state, and we've got to connect them and make people feel supported. And to do that, you got to be present. You got to show up.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, we might have to add some money to the travel budget, but I wouldn't add it for out-of-state travel. I would add
Well,
it
I'm
for
glad to
in-state
hear
travel.
that. I'm glad to. And so the other thing I was thinking was that I think the biggest deficit coming into the thing, and I attended a meeting. Like I said, I'm 3 years in, and on the second year when the new chairs got elected and stuff, we ended up having a Zoom call with one of the CD. I'm in all three CDs, so My county is. So when we had the Zoom call with one of the CD people, a person that had been a very veteran, seasoned county chair, it just ripped into all the new ones about you need to get your stuff together and get this done and do. And I was like, wow, really? That's how you want new county chairs to be greeted and taught their responsibilities. And so my focus would be having a workshop within a month of them getting the job so that you can spend that 8 hours. And if they need to stay overnight because of travel, but spend that 8 hours saying, here's the 2 year plan. Here's the things that you have to do, and here's the things you should be doing, and to grow the party or to grow the membership and the voters, and here's what I mean, because that doesn't happen, and that really should happen in my opinion. If you were going to put a line item down in terms of funding for training, then that with the vice chair coming along too, because if the chair disappears, the vice chair needs to step up. So those are really important considerations. Is what I was thinking.
I could not agree more. And I know that Augustine Montoya, who's running for vice chair, has given me a whole plan for all the different types of training that we, as the DPNM officers, would need to provide. I spoke to the chair in Union County last weekend, and she said, they told me, okay, you want to be chair, you're chair here. And she got no training. And I said,
Right.
oh, well, that will change. And then I hung up the phone, and Augie was here with me. We were both making calls, and I said, "Hey, Augie, have you talked to this woman who's the chair of Union County?" He said, "Oh yeah, I'm going to talk to her tomorrow. I'm going to go train her." So he's already, as he's calling people and hearing that there's a gap in, knowledge gap, training gap, he's already sort of doing the job in a way and helping train them. What we'd really like to do is have a whole series of training, some of which could be recorded, like this Zoom conversation. Some would be in person, but we should never just leave somebody hanging. I'd love to have, again, as another line item to raise money against, I'd love to be able to say to the county chairs, here's money for a cell phone if you don't want to use your personal cell phone. Here's money for a PO box. Here's money toward a laptop. Here's a template for a website that you can just turn on and you can easily customize it. I mean, there are all sorts of ways that we could support and improve the lives of the county chairs, because as you said about the state party officers, it's a full-time unpaid job. If you're doing the county chair job,
It's full
particularly in
time
a
and
large
unpaid as
rural
well.
county. It is, yeah, it is. But we need to, the party's strength is supporting people. And we need to
Mhm.
actually support those people. I'll give you one other example of something I'd like to do. We
Okay.
currently charge candidates for access to Vote Builder, to VAN. So it's $6,000. And I feel like if you're saying to someone who was a reticent candidate, someone who's never run before, oh, you're starting off with a $6,000 hole, that's not very supportive. So I'd love to be able to say we could raise money elsewhere because that revenue would go away from the party. But if we could offset the cost, I'd love to be able to say for a first-time candidate in New Mexico, you don't pay for access to voter files. We'll cover that for you. So we don't put these people in a $6,000 hole.
Well, I'm not
There's all
even
sorts of
sure
stuff that
why $6,000. Where did that dollar amount come from? I mean,
I don't
does the
know.
party pay for access to van or something? Is that a line
Yeah,
item that we?
yeah.
Yeah, but I
But
mean,
it's
how do you know how much that is? Just curious.
I don't know how much of the $6,000 stays here. The vast majority of it does not. We all have to pay. But I was the volunteer coordinator for a campaign this past fall for the state house. And I was like, what do you mean we have to pay for access to get voter
Well, I
data?
have access just by virtue of my job. And so it's kind of, they made me sign a non-disclosure that I wouldn't just print stuff out for candidates and I wouldn't do this and that and the other
Right,
thing.
because each
Eh,
candidate has to have their own license, right? So whoever you are as an individual user, you have to have a license. The license costs money. But
But
there are all sorts of things that we could do.
But there's no way that someone running for a city council seat here in Roswell, New Mexico, can even fathom to come up with $6,000. That's more than their total campaign. So for them to
Yeah.
do that, then they should have a prorated share based on whatever. And like you said, the first time around, I mean, it just seems really crazy to have such a huge cost for all candidates, you know. I mean, and maybe if you're
But
running for the governor and you've already been around the block and you have a little nest egg of campaign contributions that you can use, that might not be such a big
mhm.
deal. But wow. Okay. I did not know that. I did not know that.
And that's here. I mean, and it may be. I don't. That's a good question. I don't think that it's like tiered, but I know here in Albuquerque, a candidate's going to pay 6 grand, and and the
Wow.
data in that program isn't exactly great. I mean, a lot of it is really out of date. And so, it's sort of like, anybody who looks at the party infrastructure is going to have ideas.
Well,
What I'd
hold
like
on
to
a
do
second.
is just,
Yeah.
sure.
Isn't the data is as good as that county clerk's data? So it comes from the county clerk, right? Or am I
It
wrong
does.
on that? Or
No, it does. But if somebody moved and they didn't then come back and tell the state of New Mexico, I no longer vote in fill in the blank place, we don't know. I mean, we often knock on people's doors and we're told, oh, they haven't lived here in a year, they haven't lived here in 2 years, they haven't lived here in 5 years. My wife,
that's a lick on the voter. That actually is the
yeah, no, it
voters
is.
being
It is.
irresponsible. Yeah.
Right, but that's the way the database is updated. My wife is listed as an evangelical Christian, which she is not. And I can't change that data. It's just like pre-populated. I'm like, well, what in the world gave you the idea that this person was an
That's because
evangelical
some
Christian?
the other thing is that when you're out canvassing, if you enter, you have to be very conscientious about what you're entering because whatever you enter ends up in Vote Builder, and it ends
Mhm.
up there as it's yeah, I've seen some crazy stuff myself just over the
Yeah,
years. Okay. Wow, we are really having a great conversation. I so appreciate this. And I hope this makes other people think of things too that they can then bring to the table when they
that would be
get
great.
elected locally and that kind of stuff. Number six, what
Okay.
do you think DPNM's, so we haven't covered this already, biggest concern is now?
Unity. We don't have any.
Okay.
We spend so much time fighting with each other. I always tell people when I worked in Washington, D.C., I'm going to do a little illustration here. When I worked in Washington, D.C., so here's a negotiating field, right? There's the Democrats in blue, and here's the idiot Republicans over here. Okay, so Democrats will get together on whatever the policy is, and we'll negotiate against ourselves because we're afraid of whatever they're going to say. So we negotiate and we negotiate and we negotiate. And here's where we would like the negotiations that formally begin. Meanwhile, the Republicans go, and we're like, where did they go? They've gone as far away as they can. So they move the goalposts, and redefine the playing field. And it's because
Wow.
Democrats are bound
Okay.
by fact. Republicans are not. And we're never unified. Like, was it fascists tend to fall in line, right? People who like autocracy, they just say
Right.
yes. And you
They
can see,
appeasement is what
yeah, exactly.
they're right.
And
ABC is an
you
appeaser
Yeah, and you can see it in these, Donald Trump is this big macho man who, by the way, wears makeup, colors his hair, is
and
on
a
his third
diaper.
wife, yeah, and a diaper. So there's nothing strong about him except that he tends to be a blowhard, right? And all these strong Republicans who are, macho men, they bend the knee like that because he gives them a nickname, Marco Rubio, or he, says something nasty about their family, Ted Cruz. Instead of standing up and saying, screw you, that's my wife you're talking about, they go, oh, I am so sorry. So they're all just capitulating. We don't do that as Democrats. We stand and fight. We fight with each other as much as we fight with other people. So I think the first thing, sorry, long answer, I'm getting there. The first thing that the DPNM has to do is get the party back to some form of unity so that we understand that is maybe even though we disagree on particular issues or methods of work, we're still the only thing standing between democracy and autocracy and fascism. And we've got to stop arguing. I hear so many as I'm running, I'm hearing people, oh, well, this person said this at the convention and this person did that. And I keep saying the same thing. I didn't like seventh grade the first time around. I don't like it now. I just want to do the work. We've got to put this other stuff to the side. Every Democrat has a right to voice their opinion. No one should be shushed. And we have to
Right.
listen to people
Right.
to help them particularly, and this, so when I say unity, I mean the whole
Oh,
state.
sorry. Mm-hmm.
We have to dust into the corners of the state. We have to find any Democrat who feels alone, who's being intimidated, who feels afraid, particularly in rural areas. And by the way, there are a lot of people in urban areas who feel overlooked as well. And we've got to pick those people up and we've got to carry them with us. And we've got to stop fighting with each other and just turn all of our energy toward repelling the Republicans.
I'm going to tell you a story that happened a couple days ago. What's today? Saturday. So this happened Thursday at 9 a.m. I'm not sure if you heard about this, but we have a district seat here in Chaves County, District 59, which is just this county, which means the governor doesn't help appoint them. It's through the county commission. My county commission is completely Republican. And so
Mhm.
I wrote a letter saying that I was interested in being named state rep because this man, because of a medical problem, resigned. So I did it for a couple of reasons, but mostly I did it just because it's not right to just have Republicans. And Democrats need to be seen and heard. And I went up and I gave my 5-minute little speech after I turned in my letter. But, what I said to them was, it's not right that Democrats aren't here, and it's not right that it's an entire board and you're all Republican. And I'm only here because I feel like, people need to know that Democrats still exist, whether you're a 73% county or not. We still, because what you say to us is you're disenfranchising us as voters. You're ignoring the needs of an entire segment of your population. And I find that
Mhm.
to be deplorable. And of course they didn't pick me. I'm so surprised. No, I told the guy that got it, I said, we both know. Still, his name is Mark Murphy. He's also a very, very wealthy man, and he's very charming and nice. And he is in oil and gas, of course. And so I told him, congratulations, Mark. And we both know that an iceberg has a better chance of freezing in hell than I do of getting that job down here in this very Republican county. So anyway, so I just think that's indicative of the fact that depending on where you live and what the makeup is, people won't run for office anymore here as Democrats in Chaves County, Lee County, Eddy County, to some degree. I think Roosevelt County and Curry County, this southeastern part of the state, they just won't do it. I don't think they do in Lincoln either, and that means that Democrats are completely disenfranchised in this area because they don't feel like they can win seats. And where I know that they could have won if they had only started really activating in certain areas, their numbers would have won them a seat at the table, a seat in the city council or the county commission. If only I could have gotten more Democrats to get out there and help me tell them you can win if you vote. If you vote, you'll get a seat at the table. But they're not even interested in hearing what we have to say anymore. Sorry.
Right. And I think there are a lot of reasons for that. One is that people are afraid, like afraid for their safety because the MAGA movement rules through fear. See previous conversation about people bending the knee because they're afraid. Trump and his acolytes are all about fear, and people should take that seriously. But the other thing is, I think people feel alone. They don't know how many other Democrats are around them because they don't want to, they can see the red hat gang, but they can't see the Democrats, right? And only 2/3 of Democrats voted in the November elections, one of the most consequential elections ever held in the history of mankind. And 67% was our turnout level, which means almost a third of the registered voters in this state, more of whom were Democrats than Republicans, didn't vote. And we've got to get those people to express their opinion. How will we know how people really feel here in New Mexico unless we get those reticent Democrats and people who are not Democrats, maybe they used to be Democrats, who just say, oh, it's too much work and I don't have time for this and I can't read all the stuff and it doesn't make a difference because nothing ever changes for me anyway. We've got to figure out how to reach those people and convince them. No one's asking you to pick up a gun and go to war. We just want you to go to the ballot box and fill in some circles. You can do that. And you should do that because it does matter. And
Well, and at
particularly,
this
the local level.
I'm sorry, at this juncture in New Mexico, we're in better shape than most other states where their legislatures are wiping away the voters' rights and they're wiping away the ability for people to go and have their vote actually counted, like in North Carolina, that whole situation is just deplorable, for the Supreme Court justice or judge who, has been battling, and now the North Carolina Supreme Court has said, "Oh, well, we're gonna just wait until this man just, we go to court to see if we can disenfranchise 60,000 voters from that election," which I think is very funny because he only wants it to apply to his election. This is the Republican judge that lost the Supreme Court seat. He didn't win. And he wants to
Right.
disenfranchise those votes. I'm not sure how familiar you are with that story. But then he doesn't want to disenfranchise the other elections that were made with those votes, like the president or any of the state run offices or the legislature. Doesn't want to take away those votes from those people, only for his election, which is so
Well, and
not democratic.
because
Sorry, go ahead.
Republicans only support democracy when they win. It's the exact same thing Trump did, right? When he was calling to find those extra votes in Georgia, he wasn't talking about the governor's race, which was won by a Republican. He wasn't talking about House seats, US House seats that were run by Republicans. They only care when it applies to them, and the hypocrisy, it is just lost on them. They don't care. There's shame. Like people keep saying nothing matters. I think that's true. Shame for Republicans doesn't matter. Lying for Republicans doesn't matter. Hypocrisy doesn't matter. Being conveniently Democratic with a small d doesn't matter. It's all they care about is having power for power's sake, because they see the world as a zero-sum game. If I'm up, I must have pushed them down. Whereas Democrats believe, at least I think Democrats believe fundamentally that, it is
Everybody
true
should
that a
be
rising
up.
tide lifts all votes. Right. We we
Right.
we believe giving everybody equal opportunity. Republicans do not. Period. Full stop. That is the fundamental difference between the two parties.
I don't disagree with you. I don't. All right, now I'm going to ask you a hard one. You ready?
Okay.
I'm just joking. What makes you the right choice for this position?
That's actually a good question, because that's why we're talking, right? Why
Right.
me? Why this? Why now? I get that. And I'm not a native New Mexican, and I'm learning a lot about the state politics here. And I have done my best to dig in. Again, been here for 5 years, two of which were COVID, but I've worked on multiple campaigns. I mentioned before I was a volunteer coordinator for House District 31 this fall. I'm on the Democratic Party of Bernalillo County Advisory Board. I'm on the County Resolutions Committee. I'm on the Central Committee. I'm on the State Central Committee. I'm on the DPNM Budget and Finance Committee. I'm a precinct chair. I'm a vice chair of our ward. I'll be the ward chair. I was a presidential elector
When do you
this past
sleep?
election,
No,
which was
I'm
amazing.
just going.
You know,
Yeah.
but when I get into something, I get all the way in. I mean, I am
Okay.
100% in this. I have good management experience. I understand finances and fundraising, organizations, not for profits. I've established and managed. I think as I look at the boxes that need to be checked, the only
Mhm.
one that I honestly can tell you that is not checked is I am not an accountant. But Raylan
I
assures
don't
me
think
that
that
that is not a prerequisite.
matters. Yeah, I don't think that matters. Yeah, my treasurer here is not an accountant in my Democratic local party. She's not an accountant, but she's very diligent. She makes me count the pennies. So provide the receipts, all that good stuff. So
Yep.
she's
Everything has to
wonderful.
tie up at the end of the month, right?
That's right. It does. It really does. Um, Great answer. Thank you so much for that. On a national level, I know we've talked about media and the communication and misinformation, disinformation, kind of touched on those a little bit.
Yeah.
But what do you see as the biggest obstacle for us maintaining or getting past the American First MAGA agenda?
I think that the biggest challenge for us, which is a sort of a byproduct or a direct product of them having this Pravda kind of state-sponsored media when Trump is in power, is that there are literally now two different realities that we live in. I mean, never did I think in my lifetime there would be such a thing as alternative facts, right? I
Oh
mean,
gosh, remember the
the
first time
sky
you
is
heard
up and
somebody
down.
say it? What was,
Yeah,
the scarecrow looking
name,
lady?
yeah,
And
yeah, that's her
I
name.
heard it and I thought, is that can't be a real thing, but it's a real thing now. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
sorry
but
to
it is,
interrupt,
and
but go ahead.
No, we are very much bound as Democrats by the truth and facts, and Republicans will just throw, stuff against the wall and create chaos. Um, the fact that people really don't give Joe Biden credit for all of the wonderful things that he did to create the strongest economy in decades. And Trump will take credit for all that stuff, all the work we did in foreign policy, all the work we did to lift people up in this country. He was trying to deal with a bunch of stuff and he kept getting blocked. But it doesn't matter because there's a whole group of Americans who never hear a word about any of that. All they hear about is their great dear leader Trump and all the wonderful things that he's going to do, which, by the way, he didn't do them the first time. He's not going to do a lot of them this time. We don't have a wall that Mexico paid for, on and on and on. But I think that is still the biggest issue we face is these conspiracy theories. Like they're talking about Gavin Newsom being wholly responsible for the wildfires, those devastating wildfires in Los Angeles. They're going to blame any Democrat who has any traction is going to get blamed for, I don't know, something horrible. And those people who get their information from the alternative fact purveyors, it's tough. And I don't know, it's a really tough knot to untie. I think that is our biggest challenge.
Do you know, I think of the governor of California very similarly to Cabinet Secretary Buttigieg, that the two of them have the same type of confident communication style where they address things as that's wrong. It's misinformation versus disinformation, and the devastation that and I think I want to say that I have faith in people and I think that they will get tired of it after a while. But I think that there's some element of people that are starting to see, well, that's not true. I mean, here's Governor Newsom saying, well, this is where we get our water. We don't get water out of the reservoir, which is drinking water, in order to put out fires. We get our water from this location and this is not a hand-to-hand fire. This is a drop fire from airplanes and helicopters fire,
Yeah.
and people don't understand that across the nation, mostly because they're listening to Donald Trump and his minions who are giving it disinformation, but the man himself, the governor, fighting back and going out on a limb, and I've seen him on Fox News. He is saying, you're wrong. You're absolutely wrong. This is not the way it is. And I think those things really help. And I believe that people will start paying more attention when those things happen. But yeah, I think I've asked this question 3 times now, and pretty much it's the same answer for everybody. We just really have a problem communicating our message to the people that really need to hear it. They're so used to being lied to now that they don't believe anything. And that was the whole point. That's what that lady in 1929 said. The whole point of lying isn't to believe the lie, it's to get you to not believe anything. And I think that's where we're at. It's very hard.
Yeah.
Um, my last question was, what do you want people to know who will be voting for you about your commitment, knowledge, and focus if you haven't already told us what they are? So.
I think we've talked about my focus. I think I would have the good fortune of following Ray Ellen because she really has just done a great service to the party by putting monetary
Yeah.
controls and processes in place.
Hmm.
Um, I will say that if I was being immodest, I would want people to know that I'm an excellent manager, colleague.
Okay.
I'm good at strategy. I'm a good leader. I'm probably a better leader than I'm a manager, but that's okay because there are other people who do the day-to-day management stuff. But
Hmm.
my focus, I think, would be on just getting the work done, making sure that we have clean financials every month, that our reserves are kept in reserves, that we're finding ways to diversify our revenues and making sure that we're not um, spending on things that the membership doesn't want us to spend on. I'd love to find ways to have more in-person events. And I guess if I was going to say anything as a closing statement, I really look forward to engaging with any member of the party who wants to talk to me. I
Okay.
learn stuff every time I have one of these conversations, and I would just ask my fellow SCC members and those people who will be joining the SCC this spring to vote for me. I know there's nobody running against me at this point, but it doesn't mean there won't be anybody running against me. And I never want to assume that I should just skate into a job. I want to work for this job. I want people to challenge me. I want them to ask me questions. And I
Okay.
just appreciate people's consideration. And that's it. I hope they'll vote for me.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, unless you can think of something else you really want to get out to people, um, I'm 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 very happy to have met you and had this time together, and I really appreciate it. So I'm gonna turn the recording off and then tell you how I'm gonna send you all this good stuff. But so I'm gonna say goodbye, everyone. Thanks for listening, and I'm gonna turn our recording off. Bye.